Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, April 20th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Well, what a difference a day makes. Millions of people are breathing a sigh of relief. A lot of people in Minneapolis, Minnesota are breathing a sigh of relief after the news that came down about 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, that Derek Chauvin, former officer Derek Chauvin, has been found guilty on all three charges in the murder of George Floyd. So it was a tense, the jury deliberated for almost 11 hours, and there were a lot of tense people around the country, but especially in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But that anxiety turned into jubilation for many. Okay, so we're going to break down what happened. We heard responses from Vice President Kamala Harris, President Joe Biden, as well as Attorney General Keith Ellison. And they're talking about how this is just one step in holding police officers accountable and the systemic change that needs to take place in policing. Keith Ellison is brilliant. Attorney General Keith Ellison, former member of the House of Representatives, is brilliant. And also, this is an example of the difference that voting for the right elected officials make, because he is Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, and that is an elected position. They voted the right person into office. And I did a post today on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and I said, one, thank you to the prosecution team, but thank you to Attorney General Keith Ellison, who put together the prosecution team. But I said I wish we had Keith Ellison as Attorney General in Kentucky handling the Breonna Taylor case, because we see that Attorney General David Cameron, he's African American also. Keith Ellison is African American, for those that don't know. David Cameron is African American. He was elected as well, but he did a horrible job. Okay, so this is the difference in electing the right person in the office and electing the wrong person in the office. Okay, this is the difference. All right, so we're going to give a recap of what happened today. Share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. And it's something very important that Keith Ellison said. Attorney General Keith Ellison said, he said, the work of our generation is to put an end to the vestiges of Jim Crow. The work of our generation is to put an end to the vestiges of Jim Crow. Okay, and he's correct. It's not going to take place with one bill. It's not going to take place in one election cycle. Okay, it's a continuous effort, and one step builds upon the other. All right. So on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. All right, we're going to go to clip one, Shakita, to get a recap on what took place today. Now, former Minneapolis, Minnesota police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted of murdering George Floyd on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021, the conclusion of a closely watched trial that came nearly a year after George Floyd was killed, May 20th, 2020. Now, on the other side of the break, I'm going to share with you what the original police report said in the killing of George Floyd, because it didn't mention anything about Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes. It didn't talk about that at all. It was only after video surfaced from bystanders recording what happened, including Darnella Frazier, That's when we found out about Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck. Let's go to clip one, Shakita. Take it off mute, please.
Minneapolis. Glee Grand Pride as the verdict is read.
I can't believe it. It feels there's poetry in the fact that he couldn't breathe, and it feels like we just got a breath of fresh air. Like for the first time, it feels like we can breathe.
It was just a beautiful moment when we finally get to see somebody get at least an inch of justice.
All right for the jury.
Inside the courthouse, the dramatic conclusion to one of the most high-stakes trials in memory. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin looking on as the verdict was read late today.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
Guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of third-degree murder, and guilty of second-degree manslaughter.
I ask for time and patience to review the facts, gather evidence, and prosecute for the murder of George Floyd to the fullest extent the law allowed.
After marathon closing arguments where the prosecution argued George Floyd died because of Chauvin's knee on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, and the defense countered that Floyd's death was due to other factors like drug use and prior health conditions, the sequestered jury got the case late Monday. It was made up of 5 men and 7 women. 6 jurors were white, 4 black, 2 multiracial. They ranged in age from their 20s to their 60s and included a chemist, an auditor, an executive assistant, and someone who works in IT. For the Floyd family, the wait has been agonizing.
I'm feeling tears of joy, so emotional that no family in history ever got this far. We were able to get a guilty charge on all accounts. We got a chance to go to trial. We took it all away. This right here is for everyone that's been in this situation. Everybody. We are here. We stand in a unit.
Late today, President Biden placed this phone call.
God, now there's justice.
Tonight, Derek Chauvin led away in handcuffs for the murder of George Floyd. Outside the courthouse, relief.
And Gabe, outside that courthouse, people I know watching on their cell phones, what was the moment like when the verdict was read?
Well, Lester, it was really incredible to watch. And right now there is a celebration on the way right outside the courthouse. During this trial, both the prosecution and the defense had insisted that this case is solely about the actions of Derek Chauvin. But for so many people in this crowd, it was about so much more.
And it seemed that many were actually stunned by the verdict.
Yeah, that's right, Lester. As you said, they gathered around their cell phones. Some of them heard it a few seconds before, and others because of different feeds. And they started yelling throughout the crowd, really passing along the news. To a moment, some burst into tears as the verdict was read. Many were surprised. This was the moment they had finally been waiting for, Lester.
All right. Okay, pause it right there. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. You see the picture that I have up here of Derek Chauvin in handcuffs being led away. Hashtag lock his ass up. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
We all know the cannabis industry is headed toward an uprise in the past decade. What happens when there is a brand that brings this uprise in a blow? The cannabis industry welcomes her uprise. Hustle her hemp. Delivering excellence with pride is her watchword, and how you choose to embrace it makes it a priority. From cultivating rich cannabis into exquisite and tastefully finished CBD products to delivery, Hustle Her Hemp leaves no stone unturned. Hustle Her Hemp's mission is to empower women of color by building business and creating legacies, uniting beauty, health, and business. We are a pure definition of how we want the CBD industry to become in the future. While we are redefining innovation, we bring the same energy to improving the quality of life. Hustle Her Hemp is the new uprise.
Hi, I'm Joel Wilson, President and CEO of JCW Computer Consulting LLC, a technology implementation firm with over 20 years of satisfying customers. We offer a full spectrum of industry top-tier branded services. We are an authorized partner or reseller for Lenovo, Zoom, T-Mobile, Microsoft 365 and Surface tablets, Google Workspace, Acer, Asus, Samsung, PCmatic security software, and many more. Our online store features laptops, Chromebooks, computers, printers, accessories, and software. Businesses, take advantage of our free 1-hour Zoom tech consultation and know we offer top nationwide high-speed internet service providers, voice over IP, and cellular phone services. Home users, don't miss our current in-stock Chromebook inventory. Please visit us at jcwcc.com or call 215-879-6701.
Are you getting ready for fall or winter? We have the solution for all seasonal clothing needs. Kemeticwear.com is the go-to online source for Kemetic African fashion and lifestyle products with a contemporary twist. We're committed to offering unique styles reflecting our African heritage. Kemeticwear.com is inspired by KemeticScribes.com to influence our people in learning and showing pride. Please visit our website at Kemeticwear.com.
Okay, we're going to go to this next clip here in just a minute. So Derek Chauvin was found guilty, all three charges: second degree unintentional murder, third degree murder, second degree manslaughter. All right. Let's see here. Okay. So we heard from a number of people speaking today, speaking out on the verdict. Everybody from President Joe Biden, who is calling for the passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, as well as Vice President Kamala Harris, who helped write that bill when she was in the U.S. Senate. So we know that the jury deliberated for just over 10 hours. The jury returned guilty verdicts on all three: second degree unintentional murder, third degree murder, and second degree manslaughter. Now, Derek Chauvin faces up to 40 years in prison. He faces up to 40 years in prison and will await sentencing in 8 weeks from, he will await sentencing in jail. And sentencing is supposed to take place in 8 weeks, sometime in June. Okay. Now, President Joe Biden said today, and you're going to hear him here in just a minute, he said it's not enough. We can't stop here. President Biden said in remarks at the White House after the conviction, a rare example of punishment after a police killing. Now, we know Vice President Kamala Harris urged senators to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, saying this work is long overdue. This work is long overdue. And that racial injustice is a problem for every American. Racial injustice is a problem for every American. So that's extremely important. Now, we talked about this before, and this also ties into the study from Citigroup Bank that dealt with how the U.S. has lost $16 trillion over the past 20 years, $16 trillion over the past 20 years, from year 2000 to the year 2020, because of racism and discrimination and things like this. And how, if you correct these various policies and loopholes, the U.S. could increase its, the U.S. economy could grow by $5 trillion over the next 5 years. All right. And what Vice President Kamala Harris is talking about, as well as the study from Citigroup Bank, is how racism negatively impacts everybody. As long as police misconduct, police brutality, etc., just appears to be a quote unquote black thing, is not going to change. when you deal with how this negatively impacts everybody, how police misconduct lawsuits and the settlements take money from various cities, various municipalities that could go to education, that could go to job training, that could go to mental health, that could go to a number of other things that are needed, because you can't control police officers in certain cities. Not there are approximately 18,500 police departments, so I'm not talking about all of them. But this is a American problem. It's not just an African American problem. It's an American problem. Vice President Kamala Harris urged senators to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, saying this work is long overdue and that racial injustice is a problem for every American. Now, let's see. I want to go to this next clip here. And this is from, we're going to go to clip 3, Shakita. We'll skip over clip 2. We'll go to clip 3. Now, after the Derek Chauvin verdict, Vice President Kamala Harris calls on Congress to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Okay, let's go to this clip.
I want to thank you for your service. And I want to thank Mr. Floyd's family for your steadfastness. Today, we feel a sigh of relief. Still, it cannot take away the pain. A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice. This verdict brings us a step closer, and the fact is, we still have work to do. We still must reform the system. Last summer, together with Senator Cory Booker and Representative Karen Bass, I introduced the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. This bill would hold law enforcement accountable and help build trust between law enforcement and our communities. This bill is part of George Floyd's legacy. The President and I will continue to urge the Senate to pass this legislation, not as a panacea for every problem, but as a start. This work is long overdue. America has a long history of systemic racism. Black Americans, and Black men in particular, have been treated throughout the course of our history as less than human. Black men are fathers and brothers and sons and uncles and grandfathers and friends and neighbors. Their lives must be valued in our education system, in our healthcare system, in our housing system, in our economic system, in our criminal justice system, in our nation. Full stop. Because of smartphones, so many Americans have now seen the racial injustice that Black Americans have known for generations. The racial injustice that we have fought for generations, that my parents protested in the 1960s, that millions of us, Americans of every race, protested last summer. Here's the truth about racial injustice. It is not just a Black America problem or a people of color problem. It is a problem for every American. It is keeping us from fulfilling the promise of liberty and justice for all. And it is holding our nation back from realizing our full potential. We are all a part of George Floyd's legacy, and our job now is to honor it and to honor him. Thank you.
Okay, so then after Vice President Kamala Harris spoke, and we're going to go to we'll go to that clip. Let's see. We'll go to Joe Biden here next, Shakita. I think I had the link in there for the Joe Biden clip. I hope I had it. If not, I got to find it. Then after Vice President Kamala Harris spoke, President Joe Biden spoke as well. And they want to use the momentum of this verdict and the attention around the verdict and the call for the need, the call for a change in the way policing is done and addressing systemic racism and things like this. They're calling for this to push through the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act through the U.S. Senate. Now, you're going to need 60 votes in the Senate unless they change the filibuster rule. They get rid of the filibuster rule. And Joe Manchin has already said he's totally against changing anything dealing with the filibuster rule. Joe Manchin, conservative Democrat from West Virginia. You're going to need 50+1 votes to change the filibuster rule. I don't think any Republicans are going to vote for it. I don't even think Senator Tim Scott, Black Tea Party Republican, is going to vote for it either. Okay, I don't think he's going to vote for it as well. So unless you get 50+1, and the one would be Vice President Kamala Harris as a tiebreaker, unless you get 50+1, it's not going to happen. At least not in the 117th Congress. Now, maybe it'll happen. Maybe it'll happen in the 118th Congress, which gets sworn in January of 2023. January 2023. But no Republicans are going. I doubt if any Republicans will vote for it. Okay, so it's not going to happen. You can't run it through this the Senate budget reconciliation process because it's not basically tied to the budget. So that's not going to happen. All right, I'm going to send you this clip here in just a second. I don't know what happened to it, Shakita. I thought I had it here, Joe Biden. Let me see here. Okay. I'm going to send you this clip here. Cue this up. We're going to go to this next. All right. So, but once again, this is an example. Now, a lot of people are saying, what would have been like if Donald Trump was president and this verdict came down? Okay. I guarantee you Trump wouldn't be calling for police reform like this. All right. Number one, because he reversed the police reform that the Obama administration had in place. Okay. And you have the Biden clip. Okay. All right, good. So I want to go to this clip here in just a second. Now, some people are saying, well, it's human rights, not civil rights. Okay. You can say that, but if you don't get 60 votes, it still ain't happening. You can say it's human rights, not civil rights. Okay. But you still need the same amount of votes in the Senate to get the bill passed. So unfortunately, a lot of us don't understand math. This is problematic. A lot of us don't understand math. All right. But once again, luckily, we have Attorney General Keith Ellison as Attorney General of Minnesota. Now, there are 3 other trials coming up. The other 3 officers that were involved, there are 3 other trials, and the officers are going to be charged separately. So we'll see what happens in those trials, and how much responsibility each officer bears in this when all the facts come out. But a lot of people are saying there was a post from Jamel Hill, and we'll go to Joe Biden in just a second here, Shakita. There was a Facebook post from Jamel Hill that I posted today. And we posted this on my personal page and our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Let's look at this here. Jamel Hill said, sports writer and talk show host Jamel Hill. She's from Detroit, actually. She said that there's a difference between justice and accountability. Derek Chauvin being guilty on all counts is accountability, not justice. Okay. And she, you know, I understand that. Now, for the Floyd family, for them, it feels like they got some type of justice because this is specifically for their family member. Totally understand that as well. But most people understand that this is a step in the right direction because police officers are very rarely found guilty of murder, especially for killing African Americans. Okay. They're very rarely found guilty of killing white people as well, for that matter. But she said there's a difference between justice and accountability. Derek Chauvin being guilty on all counts is accountability, not justice. All right. But a lot of people see this as a positive step in the right direction, but we have to keep moving. And this deals with understanding laws and policies and changing laws and policies as well. All right. So President Joe Biden spoke today, and he spoke right after Vice President Kamala Harris. So we used to call him Senator Kamala Harris, but Vice President Kamala Harris, Madam Vice President. He spoke right after her, and he also echoed the need to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
In Minnesota found former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin guilty on all counts in the murder of George Floyd last May. It was a murder in the full light of day, and it ripped the blinders off the whole world to see the systemic racism the Vice President just referred to. There was systemic racism that's a stain on our nation's soul. The knee on the neck of justice for Black Americans. Profound fear and trauma. The pain, the exhaustion that Black and Brown Americans experience every single day. The murder of George Floyd launched a summer of protest we hadn't seen since the civil rights era in the 60s. Protests that unified people of every race and generation in peace and with purpose to say enough, enough, enough of this senseless killings. Today's verdict is a step forward. I just spoke with the governor of Minnesota who thanked me for the close work with his team. I also spoke with George Floyd's family again. A remarkable family of extraordinary courage. Nothing can ever bring their brother, their father back. But this can be a giant step forward in the march toward justice in America. Let's also be clear that such a verdict is also much too rare. For so many people, it seems like it took a unique and extraordinary convergence of factors. A brave young woman with a smartphone camera, a crowd that was traumatized witnesses, a murder that lasts almost 10 minutes in broad daylight for ultimately the whole world to see. Officers standing up and testifying against a fellow officer instead of just closing ranks, which should be commended. A jury who heard the evidence carried out their civic duty in the midst of an extraordinary moment, under extraordinary pressure. For so many, it feels like it took all of that for the judicial system to deliver a just basic accountability. We saw how traumatic and exhausting just watching the trial was for so many people. Think about it, those of you who are listening. Think about how traumatic it was for you. You weren't there. You didn't know any of the people. But it was difficult. especially for the witnesses who had to relive that day. It's a trauma. On top of the fear so many people of color live with every day when they go to sleep at night and pray for the safety of themselves and their loved ones. Again, as we saw in this trial from the fellow police officers who testified, most men and women who wear the badge serve their communities honorably. Those few who fail to meet that standard must be held accountable, and they were today. One was. No one should be above the law. And today's verdict sends that message. But it's not enough. We can't stop here. In order to deliver real change and reform, we can and we must do more to reduce the likelihood that tragedy like this will ever happen and occur again. To ensure that black and brown people, or anyone, so they don't fear the interactions with law enforcement, that they don't have to wake up knowing that they can lose their very life in the course of just living their life. Don't have to worry about whether their sons or daughters will come home after a grocery store run, or just walking down the street, or driving their car, or playing in the park, or just sleeping at home. This takes acknowledging and confronting head-on systemic racism and the racial disparities that exist in policing and in our criminal justice system more broadly. No state and local government and law enforcement needs to step up, and so does the federal government. That's why I've appointed the leadership of the Justice Department that I have, that is fully committed to restoring trust between law enforcement and the community they are sworn to serve and protect. I have complete confidence in the Attorney General's leadership and commitment. I've also nominated two key Justice Department nominees, Vanita Gupta and Kristen Clark, who are eminently qualified, highly respected lawyers who have spent their entire careers fighting to advance racial equity and justice. Vanita and Kristen have the experience and the skill necessary to advance our administration's priorities to root out unconstitutional policing and reform our criminal justice system. And they deserve to be confirmed. We also need Congress to act. George Floyd was murdered almost a year ago. Meaningful police reform legislation in his name. You just heard the Vice President speak of it. She helped write it. Legislation to tackle systemic misconduct in police departments, to restore trust between law enforcement and the people they're entrusted to serve and protect. But it shouldn't take a whole year to get this done. In my conversations with the Floyd family, I spoke to them again today. I assured them we're going to continue to fight for the passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act so I can sign the law as quickly as possible. There's more to do. Finally, it's the work we do every day to change hearts and minds as well as laws and policies. That's the work we have to do. Only then will full justice and full equality be delivered to all Americans. And that's what I just discussed with the Floyd family. Guilty verdict does not bring back George. But through the family's pain, we're finding purpose. So George's legacy will not be just about his death, but about what we must do in his memory. I also spoke to Gianna, George's young daughter again. When I met her last year, I've said this before, at George's funeral, I told her how brave I thought she was. And I sort of knelt down to hold her hand. She said, Daddy's looking down on you. He's so proud. She said to me then, I'll never forget it, Daddy changed the world. And I told her this afternoon, Daddy did change the world. Let that be his legacy. A legacy of peace, not violence, of justice. Peaceful expression of that legacy are inevitable and appropriate. The violent protest is not. And there are those who will seek to exploit the raw emotions of the moment, agitators and extremists who have no interest in social justice, who seek to carry out violence, destroy property, fan the flames of hate and division, who do everything in their power to stop this country's march toward racial justice. We can't let them succeed. This is a time for this country to come together, to unite as Americans. There can never be any safe harbor for hate in America. I've said it many times. The battle for soul of this nation has been a constant push and pull for more than 240 years. A tug of war between the American ideal that we're all created equal and the harsh reality that racism has long torn us apart. At our best, the American ideal wins out. So we can't leave this moment or look away thinking our work is done. We have to look at it. We look as we did for those 9 minutes and 29 seconds. We have to listen. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Those are George Floyd's last words. We can't let those words die within. We have to keep hearing those words. We must not turn away. We can't turn away. We have a chance to begin to change the trajectory in this country. It's my hope and prayer that we live up to the legacy. May God bless you. May God bless George Floyd and his family. Thank you for taking the time to be here. This can be a moment of significant change. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Joe Biden today. He spoke after Vice President Kamala Harris. There's a big push now to push through the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act and this will take place nationwide. Now, it's not an end all to be all. There's not going to be one bill that's an end all to be all. And because of the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, because of states' rights, the majority of control over policing is at the state level, state and local level, not the federal level. But there are things the federal government can do. All right, we're going to go to that last clip here. Minnesota AG. Chauvin guilty verdict shows accountability. We're going to go to that in just a second, so cue that up. I want to show you something here. This is from the live updates from the Washington Post. How bystanders changed the story of George Floyd's death. How bystanders changed the story of George Floyd's death. And what this piece talks about is the original police report about the killing of George Floyd. It didn't say anything about a knee on his neck. Now, as Americans celebrated the guilty verdict for the former police officer Derek Chauvin on Tuesday, the jury's decision also prompted poignant reflections on how different the story of George Floyd's death would have been had bystanders not intervened and filmed the interaction. It's because of the bystanders, especially Darnella Frazier, who was 17 years old at the time, 18 years old today, and she's 18 years old now. And she filmed, I think she probably got the most of it. So the 9 minutes and 29 seconds that we see, that's her video. Other people filmed portions of it as well. They helped also. Now, on May 25th, 2020, a police report titled, here's the title of the original police report: Man dies after medical incident during police interaction. This is the name of the police report dealing with the killing of George Floyd. This is what they originally said. Okay. The title of this police report was Man Dies After Medical Incident During Police Interaction. And the police report stated that the Minneapolis Police Department responded to a report of a forgery in process. Okay, a $20 bill. Now, Police Chief Arredondo said that they don't even arrest people if they're alleged of passing counterfeit money. They don't even arrest them for that. That may be a ticket possibly, but there was no evidence here that George Floyd knew that the $20 bill was counterfeit. And the store clerk, when he testified, he said that he went out to the car that George Floyd was in. He went out twice. George Floyd was still there, and they were asked about the counterfeit $20 bill, what have you. George Floyd was still there, and when the police got there, George Floyd was still there. And not only that, they released video footage never seen before. It was shown in court for the first time after George Floyd did the transaction to buy what he wanted. He stayed there in the store for a number of minutes. So if he was trying to knowingly pass counterfeit money, don't you think he would have left? Don't you think he would have been gone by the time the police got there? He was still there. Now, the roughly 200-word statement, police report, said a male suspect in his 40s who appeared under the influence, quote unquote, under the influence, resisted orders to step from his car. Quote, officers were able to get the suspect into handcuffs and noted he appeared to be suffering medical distress, the statement said. Officers called for an ambulance. He was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center by ambulance, where he died a short time later, end quote. Okay, this is from the police report. But it was only through videos filmed by concerned bystanders that the public first learned that Derek Chauvin had pinned George Floyd to the ground, pressing his knee on his neck for more than 9 minutes, because that was not in the police report. Surprise, surprise. That was not in the police report. Despite his continuous cries for help, George Floyd's continuous cries for help, gasping for air and claiming that he could not breathe. He said it 27 times he could not breathe. The statement also omitted, the police report also omitted details of how those same witnesses desperately pleaded pleaded with the police to relent. Now, on Tuesday, some people took to social media to express outrage about how similar incidents of police brutality are often reported, and pointed at the crucial role those bystanders played on the entire case. Ms. wrote on Twitter, quote, can we all sing a praise song for Darnella Frazier, who had the presence of mind to film that video that made such a difference in this case, and now must live with the memories that will walk alongside her for the rest of her years. A man on Twitter wrote, how many similar reports or police reports have covered up similar murders? Another person responded, I think if we ever found out the answer to that, it would be received with shock, mourning, disbelief, and despair. Okay, so check this out. This is from the live updates from the Washington Post, dealing with the verdict. And Joe Biden calls for confronting systemic racism after Derek Chauvin convicted of murder in George Floyd's death. All right, those watching on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. We're going to go to, I want you to hear what Attorney General Keith Ellison had to say. Attorney General Keith Ellison. I want you to hear what he had to say. And he's from Detroit also. He graduated from Wayne State University, my alma mater, or he graduated before me, so that'd be his alma mater, I guess. But he graduated from Wayne State University also. He's from Detroit. All right. I want to remind you, you can register at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for my new online course that starts up Saturday, April 24th, 2021, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? Remember, right now is correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Okay, we're going to post a link here. You can register for my online course that starts Saturday, April 24th, 2021, ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place also, all right? So you'll hear more about that. Okay, let's continue here. All right, I want to go to, let's cue this up because we couldn't squeeze this in while we're on 9:10 a.m. WFDF. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. And be sure to follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live also. Okay, let me cue up this next clip here. So Attorney General Keith Ellison spoke today. Brilliant, brilliant brother. And he called for the need to fight against the vestiges of Jim Crow. He said the work of our generation is to put an end to the vestiges of Jim Crow. He's absolutely correct. Okay. All right. So hold on just a second here. We're going to go to this clip here. All right. Just a minute. Okay. This is Attorney General Keith Ellison at a press conference today.
Since the investigation and prosecution of this case began last May, everyone involved has pursued one goal: justice. We pursued justice wherever it led. When I became the lead prosecutor for the case, I asked for time and patience to review the facts, gather evidence, and prosecute for the murder of George Floyd to the fullest extent the law allowed. I want to thank the community for giving us that time and allowing us to do our work. That long, hard, painstaking work has culminated today. I would not call today's verdict justice, however, because justice implies true restoration. But it is accountability, which is the first step towards justice. And now the cause of justice is in your hands. And when I say your hands, I mean the hands of the people of the United States. George Floyd mattered. He was loved by his family and his friends. His death shocked the conscience of our community, our country, the whole world. He was loved by his family and friends. But that isn't why he mattered. He mattered because he was a human being. And there is no way we can turn away from that reality. The people who stopped and raised their voices on May 25th, 2020, were a bouquet of humanity, a phrase I stole from my friend Jerry Blackwell. A bouquet of humanity, old, young, men and women, black and white, a man from the neighborhood just walking to get a drink, a child going to buy a snack with her cousin, an off-duty firefighter on her way to a community garden, brave young women, teenagers, who press record on their cell phones. Why did they stop? They didn't know George Floyd. They didn't know he had a beautiful family. They didn't know he had been a great athlete. And they didn't know he was a proud father or that he had people in his life who loved him. They stopped and raised their voices, and they even challenged authority because they saw his humanity. They stopped and they raised their voices because they knew that what they were seeing was wrong. They didn't need to be medical professionals or experts in the use of force. They knew it was wrong, and they were right. These community members, this bouquet of humanity, did it again in this trial. They performed simple yet profound acts of courage. They told the truth, and they told the whole world the truth about what they saw. They were vindicated by the chief of police, by Minneapolis' longest serving police officer, and by many other police officers who stepped up and testified as to what they saw and to what they knew. What happened on that street was wrong. We owe it, and we owe our gratitude we owe them our gratitude for fulfilling their civic duty and for their courage in telling the truth. To countless people in Minnesota and across the United States who joined them in peacefully demanding justice for George Floyd, we say, all of us, thank you.
All right. So that was Attorney General Keith Ellison from Detroit. All right. This was after the verdict was read. He put together a fantastic prosecutorial team. And there are going to be 3 more trials coming up in the near future. I don't know the exact dates for the other 3 officers. They're going to try them individually. So there are 3 other trials. I think this one will probably be the longest trial, the most extensive, probably the most emotional trial, probably the most emotionally draining trial of Derek Chauvin. So the other ones, even though they may be trying, I don't think they will be as emotionally draining as this one was. Okay. So Attorney General Merrick Garland spoke today also. Now we know that he was in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Monday, April 19th. Okay. He was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he spoke there. And on the Rachel Maddow show, Rachel Maddow she talked about some of the history of the Tulsa race massacre. That was on Monday's show. She talked about some of the history of the Tulsa race massacre. Some of you all saw that. And she dealt with the fact that Merrick Garland was there in Tulsa, and he gave a speech on Monday. Now, today he talked about the fact that the Justice Department's investigation into George Floyd's death is ongoing. The Justice Department's investigation into George Floyd's death is ongoing. So we'll see what comes of that. When you deal with the federal government investigating, they're going to, if they bring charges, that's based upon the fact that it's based upon civil rights violations. Okay, it's based upon the officer willfully depriving someone of their civil rights. It's dealing with willful intent. It's a civil rights violation, and they have to prove that an officer willfully intended to deprive someone of their civil rights. So we'll see what takes place with that investigation. But Attorney General Merrick Garland said, and let's see here. Attorney General Merrick Garland said Tuesday that the U.S. Justice Department's investigation into George Floyd's death remains ongoing, suggesting it is still possible that Derek Chauvin and others could face federal civil rights charges. Okay, so we'll see what happens in that case. With me, as far as I'm concerned, this is just me. However you get their asses in prison, that's what that's what I want to see the most. Okay, whatever charge you get them on, is cool with me. Okay, as long as they go to prison, as long as there's some accountability. All right, whatever charge it is, whether it's a civil rights charge. Now, of course, you want them found guilty at the state level. You don't want a situation where, because like with the Rodney King case, you know, those officers were found not guilty at the local level, but then 2 were charged at the federal level and went to prison because of federal civil rights charges. All right. So a lot of people don't remember that. In Rodney King case, 2 of those officers that were acquitted at the local level, they were convicted at the federal level, but as you know, on civil rights charges. However you can get them in prison, okay, that's what I'm for. All right. So in a statement today, Attorney General Merrick Garland said the jury in Derek Chauvin's trial on state charges had, quote, fulfilled its civic duty, and noted, quote, while the state's prosecution was successful, I know that nothing can fill the void that the loved ones of George Floyd have felt since his death, end quote. He went on to say the Justice Department has previously announced a federal civil rights investigation into the death of George Floyd. This investigation is ongoing. Now, the Justice Department often investigates incidents in which police officers kill those in their custody as possible civil rights violations. Those state manslaughter, murder, or assault charges are generally easier to prove. Okay. Those state manslaughter, murder, or assault charges are generally easier to prove. It's very hard to prove the civil rights violation at the federal level against a police officer. That's hard to prove. You have to prove willful intent. You have to prove that they willfully intended to deprive someone of their civil rights, not based upon what you believe, not based upon what Pebbles told Cookie that she thought she heard, but based upon the evidence. And that really goes to state of mind. So you can't, the burden of proof is not to prove that they actually did deprive someone of their civil rights. You have to prove that they willfully intended to do so, not that they actually did it. So the burden of proof is very high. Now, the Department of Justice does not set the burden of proof. It's Congress that passed the law that gave the Department of Justice the authority to be able to do that. So Congress has to pass a law to lower the threshold to convict officers on civil rights violations at the federal level. Okay. And this is something that Attorney General Eric Holder said in one of his last interviews that he did as Attorney General. He talked about the fact that the burden of proof that has to be met, the threshold that has to be met for the Justice Department is very high to prove willful intent, and that Congress needs to lower the threshold that has to be met. Okay, so we have that from the Justice Department also. And we heard from Vice President Kamala Harris as well. She talked about how this work is long overdue. And she urged for the passing of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. I wonder how many Republicans are going to be talking about trying to hold police accountable. Now, are these going to be some of the same Republicans that were involved in the January 6th insurrection that are going to talk about holding police accountable? I don't think so. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, he spoke at a press conference today also. And he said that justice for George Floyd will only come with systemic change. Justice for George Floyd will only come with systemic change. Now, what's interesting, is I don't remember hearing any Republicans talk about systemic change and justice and policing and anything like this. And I don't remember hearing. I mean, there may be one out of almost 200, but if there is one that said anything of any significance, let me know. Okay. True justice for George Floyd will only come with systemic change, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says. Now, he said Tuesday that while he commended the prosecutor's work and the jury's decision to convict Derek Chauvin, true justice for George Floyd will only come through, quote, real systemic change. Real systemic change. I'm still waiting on any Republicans to talk about this. Okay. I'm still waiting on any Republicans to talk about this because I haven't seen any legislation that they have backed to bring about real systemic change. No, I think there's only one. Let me see. I think, okay, in the House of Representatives, I don't think any Republican. It may have been one Republican that voted for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act because it already passed the House. It may have been one Republican. Let me see something here. May have been one Republican. Let me try to check this. I can't remember which vote that was. It was one Republican that made a mistake and said, "Oh, I have to change it." Okay, so the House approved back in March 2021. House approves George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. The House late Wednesday night gave the green light to the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. 220 to 212 was the vote. This is March 3rd, 2021. The vote was initially scheduled to happen Thursday, but was moved up due to a potential threat to the Capitol related to the QAnon conspiracy theory. Okay, that's right. I remember that. The sweeping police reform received no Republican votes. That's right. Initially, Representative Lance Gooden, Republican from Texas, had voted in favor of the bill, but he later tweeted that he had pressed the wrong button. That's right. I remember. That's the vote. I remember that. It was a Republican who accidentally voted for it and changed it because he said I pressed the wrong button. Okay, so no Republicans voted for this in the House. All right, so read this from thehill.com. Okay, House approves George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. This is March 3rd, 2021, and I remember they had to go through and push this bill through because there were threats from the crazy ass QAnon people. Okay, that Congress was getting. They were receiving threats, so they had to go through and push this bill through. So it passed the House of Representatives. 220 to 212, basically along party lines. And Representative Ilhan Omar, who represents the Minnesota district where George Floyd was killed, served as Speaker pro temp during the floor debate over the legislation. The sweeping police reform bill received no Republican votes. Okay, so once again, I haven't heard any Republicans talk about systemic, changes, systematic racism and all this stuff. All right, can we get this dumbass out of here? Okay, thank you. That was an ad for the stupid ass Marjorie Taylor Greene, the crazy QAnon lady. Get the hell out of here. So initially, Representative Lance Gooden, Republican from Texas, had voted in favor of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, but he later tweeted that he had pressed the wrong button. Okay, he later tweeted he had pressed the wrong button, a post he later deleted and replaced. Two Democrats, Representatives Jared Golden of Maine and Ron Kind of Wisconsin, voted against the measure. They'll probably get voted out of office, hopefully. The bill faces a tough road in the Senate. Yes, it does. because you need 60 votes in the Senate, and no Republicans are going to vote for it in the Senate. I don't think. Maybe one. You may find one Republican that may be drunk or something, and one may vote for it. That's why you have to get rid of the filibuster and put pressure on Joe Manchin in West Virginia, okay, to get him to vote for the bill. Now, Representative Joyce Beatty, who's the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, said she and other leaders of the group have had great conversations with Senator Tim Scott, Black Tea Party Republican, who said he's not voting for reparations. That Senator Tim Scott, okay? The Senator Tim Scott that voted not to certify the election in the Senate, that Senator Tim, the black one, the black bald-headed Republican, that Tim Scott, okay? That's the one. She said they've had great conversations with Senator Tim Scott about finding middle ground in hopes of pushing the bill through the 50-50 Senate and to President Joe Biden's desk. Representative Joyce Beatty, the only black Republican Tim Scott, the only black Republican senator, has his own police reform proposal and has been open to elements of the Democrats' version. But his is weak. He sponsored the bill. He put the bill together. It's weak. Okay? And Donald Trump supported the bill. So you know it's weak. Donald Trump supported the Tim Scott police reform bill. It's not called the Tim Scott police reform bill, but Tim Scott put the bill together. Donald Trump supported it. It's weak as hell. Read the rest of this here. Okay, I don't have time to go through all this. So it has an uphill battle in the Senate. Okay, but this is why we have to put pressure on those in the Senate. Okay, so the fight continues. All right, now, what was the next thing I was going to go to? Okay, yeah. So Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. I want to go back to that piece. He said, here in Minnesota, our work just begins. He said this at a news conference the day after the verdict. He said, this is the floor, not the ceiling of where we need to get to. This is the floor, not the ceiling of where we need to get to. And he called for real reforms in policing and criminal justice. Real reforms in policing and criminal justice. Now, I haven't heard many Republicans calling for this. Tim Scott has called for it a little bit. Most of the other ones, I haven't heard from them calling for real reforms in policing and justice. Some of them were talking about overthrowing the government. You had 147 Republicans in the House of Representatives, including dumbass Burgess Owens from Utah. He's black. Okay, that's the same Burgess Owens who spoke at the reparations hearing, and he spoke against reparations for black people, but the Negro's black. That Burgess Owens, the one that used to play football about 80 years ago. I mean, where did he play? 60s, 70s. Okay, I don't know for a fact that Burgess Owens has chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does. Now, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota highlighted the racial inequities in health, home ownership, and education in Minnesota, which he said must be addressed now. Must be addressed now. This is our moment, he said. Now, Governor Walz urged state officials and legislators to burn political capital needed to make systemic changes to, quote unquote, honor those who have fought for racial equality. Now, I'm still waiting on Republicans to say the same thing and take action. I haven't heard Republicans make these statements like this. Okay, they're talking about pushing through voter restriction bills. I'm waiting on Republicans to make statements like this and follow it up with legislation. They're talking about pushing through voter restriction bills. Okay, so that was, I'm looking through my notes here where I have bookmarked. Biden says country must confront systemic racism. He's absolutely correct. We talked about that as well. You heard his speech at the press conference today. We dealt with that. And Okay, we talked about Darnella Frazier. I'm going through my notes here just a second. Please bear with me. Then we have, okay, I think that's it. This is page 8. Page 9, I think that's it. All right, I want to go to this. Oh, okay. Page 11. Keith Ellison. We heard from Keith Ellison, our brother from Detroit. Keith Ellison said the work of our generation is to put an end to the vestiges of Jim Crow. The work of our generation is to put an end to the vestiges of Jim Crow. Let me see if I can we pull this one up here? Let me see. Can we get to that? Let me see if I can pull that piece up from him. I'm trying to find that. Let's see here. It looks like it's in here. Okay, I can't find it. Let's see. What did they do with that? Okay, I can't find it. I'm not sure if All right, but anyway, he talked about that today also. All right. He said it's time to transform the relationship between community and the people who are sworn to protect them from one that is mistrustful, suspicious, and in some cases terrifying, into one that is empathetic, compassionate, and affirming. Attorney General Keith Ellison, who's a Democrat, African American, unlike Attorney General Cameron in Kentucky, dealing with the Breonna Taylor case. I wish Keith Ellison was handling the Breonna Taylor case. Those officers would have been charged. Okay. Attorney General Keith Ellison said that police officers also, quote, deserve to serve in a profession that is honored. Deserve to serve in a profession that is honored. Now, he said now that work is in your hands. He said, framing Derek Chauvin's conviction as a momentous signal of accountability, but just one step in the road to equal justice. Now, Attorney General Keith Ellison named several African Americans killed by police whose cases sparked protests, but did not end in convictions, such as Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile. He also referenced 2 fatal shootings that have drawn outrage, most recently 20-year-old Dante Wright in Minneapolis area, Brooklyn Center, and 13-year-old Adam Toledo in Chicago. Okay. All right. Now, lastly, Maxine Waters, Representative Maxine Waters, was interviewed by Joanne Reed today on the Readout. We're going to go to that clip here. We have some time here, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up with Maxine Waters. And so the GOP tried to censor her today. Crazy QAnon lady Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, who was stripped of her committee assignments. So she has nothing to do except try to, start an Anglo-Saxon caucus, American First Anglo-Saxon White Supremacist Caucus. Okay. But she tried to pass a resolution to censure Maxine Waters. So we're going to go to this clip here. From the readout, Representative Maxine Waters of GOP censure, quote, Republicans love to use me as a target. Republicans love to use me as a target. Let's go to this clip.
All charges against this former police officer. As somebody who experienced that in your own community, for us to be here now and to see a conviction on all charges against this former police officer.
Joy, I want to tell you, my struggle against police abuse started many years ago. There was a woman named Eula Love who could not pay her gas bill, and they called the police out, and there was a confrontation, and they ended up shooting her down on her porch in front of her two girls. And I tangled with Daryl Gates, who is the police chief, who not only really did support and use the chokehold, but he had something called a battering ram that he tore down the doors. And I can remember when I was in the Head Start program and we talked about, the fire people and the police and all of the helpers and the services in your district. The Head Start kids said, the police are people who come to your house and knock down your door and pull your brother out and take him away. And so I have lived with this police abuse, with Black men in particular being targeted by the police, being made to lay on the ground in their best clothes, a spread eagle across a car. And I have fought this for many, many years. I've been engaged for many years. And you mentioned Rodney King. Yes, that was another special time when we saw him beaten. I mean, literally beaten. And then we were told we could not believe our own eyes, and we did not get justice. And so today is very special. Something very special has happened. But when I talk about why it is so important for us to have diversity and inclusion, it is because of Keith Ellison, who is the district attorney. To the degree that we get more people in these positions of power, particularly in the criminal justice system, we're going to be able to get more justice. And so, of course, I'm criticized all the time. And of course, the Republicans make a target of me. But as you know, I am passionate on these issues, having lived with them so long, having seen so much injustice. And so I'm delighted that we have the verdict that we got today. I could not believe it, but it is absolutely true. And I'm looking forward to elected officials using their influence and their power, and for our city council people who have budgets of these police, who have been intimidated by these police unions, seeing that it is possible to do right, do what is right, and to honor, the community by not just rolling
sorry. Stand by.
Over because they're intimidated by the police union and afraid that they won't get elected. You've got that budget. You give them their raises. You're responsible for their benefits. You give them all that overtime pay. Now it's time to use that power. And so I'm just pleased that I still feel strong enough and able enough to go out with the young people and say, Auntie Maxine is here, and I support you, and I want you to be activists. I'm so sorry that it causes pain oftentimes with my colleagues. Many times they're in these districts where they're frightened, where they have a lot of racism, but they still haven't moved to the point where they can have a decent conversation about these issues. And sometimes it's very difficult for them, but they stood up with me today. They put me up for censure because of my visit to Minneapolis, and my colleagues stood with me, and they voted to table the motion that was put up to censor me because the Republicans love to use me as a target. They raise money on my back. That's that Maxine Waters, that Black woman who is so uppity and who is someone we can't control. And so you've got to make sure that I have enough money to keep her from getting reelected. And I keep getting reelected. And these poor people, many of them retirees, they keep giving them their money. They don't seem to understand. They're not going to get me out of office. I'm here until I decide to retire.
And Congresswoman, you mentioned the Republican fight. I mean, I think that the women who founded the Black Lives Matter hashtag are also familiar with being Black women who are not under control and therefore are targeted on a routine basis. But, the big fight that I think your Republican colleagues are avoiding, or at least not talking about, because you're right, they're focused on you. They tried to censure you. They did not succeed in that today. But there is an actual piece of legislation that is moving through the Congress that could actually take the victory that for the family of George Floyd today and sort of put some laws on the books that could actually help to prevent the next George Floyd from dying in the way that he did. Can you talk a little bit about the George Floyd Act and whether or not you believe that that is something that now has more momentum because of this verdict? Because it doesn't appear that at least Republicans are eager to be a part of that conversation.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And it is not easy. You would think, having experienced what we have experienced, and so many millions of people saw George Floyd being murdered on the sidewalk. I mean, this was a very public event. You would think that we would have even Republicans on the most conservative side who would say, this is too much, even though I support the police, and I think that they shouldn't even be challenged in their work. They know what they're doing, but something's wrong with this. Something's wrong with what we have seen, what we have witnessed. Would be ready to come forward now and change and say, we do have to rein in the road cops. We have to make sure that they're not a part of our police departments and they don't keep getting rehired over and over again in various jurisdictions after they commit crimes in another district. But no, it's not that easy. And it's not going to be that easy to get this bill passed out of the United States Senate. That is why I say to the young people, you've got to keep your activism up. It's not going to go away because elected officials sit and think, well, let me see, this is wrong. I got to take care of this. Oftentimes we're too safe in what we do, and we don't want to make any waves. And so that's why it's so important to have activism. And that's what the civil rights movement was all about. It was about activism. It was about confrontation. As a matter of fact, I went back and did some research on Martin Luther King. He had a project called Project C. And you know what that was for? Project Confrontation. Confrontation. And a lot of people see that as being bad. And they try to turn my words into something about violence. It's not about violence. Martin Luther King was about nonviolence. I am nonviolent. And so when they take words like confrontation, which certainly confrontation was used in the sit-ins for the civil rights legislation, the marches, the prayers, all of that's confrontation. And so we've got to make sure that we continue to define who we are, what we do, what we care about, and not be so intimidated we're afraid to move. The young people want to see their elders stand up. They want to feel loved and protected. And they're out there now, and they have joined in with Black Lives Matters and other organizations. They're telling us, we're here to help get justice for all of us. We have no future unless you are on this case, unless you're dealing with the injustices that are taking place that we're confronted with. And so I'm so pleased about this verdict today. And no matter the criticism that I get, no matter the judge who even went off, about Maxine Waters, that's all right by me. I will continue to do what I think is in the best interest of our people. I will continue to speak truth to power, and I will continue to be an activist legislator. So I want to thank you for all of the attention that you've given to this, and the president being on your program tonight, expressing his views about George Floyd. And I want you to know, I was worried about Dante Wright, the 20-year-old that got killed. When I went to Minneapolis, I took his mother and father to dinner, and they relaxed. And we had a great time. And they said this was the only moment since this had happened that they were able to laugh and enjoy. And so that's who I am. That's what I do. And that's what we all must do. We must all see that we have a role in having to bring about justice in this country. We have a role to ensure that the people can expect to live in a real democracy with respect for the Constitution and respect for each other. So here we are. Someone said to me today, I'm not just celebrating, I'm relieved. Yeah. And that's how I feel too. I'm relieved. Thank you.
Congresswoman, I think they also call that good trouble. And we appreciate that that's exactly right, that you do not back down and you continue to fight for what you believe in.
All right. That's Representative Congresswoman Maxine Waters. breaking it down. Okay. And I'm still waiting on any Republicans to step up to the plate, because because Republicans, and let's look at this. You got all these black Republicans and wannabe black conservatives running around, Candace Owens and Paris Denard, all these black Republicans, Angela K. Stanton, and you've got Bruce Lavelle, and they tell Burgess Owens. And they say that black people need to vote for Republicans. Republicans are for this and that. I'm trying to, but besides 361 voter restriction bills and 147 Republicans in the House of Representatives who voted not to certify the 2020 presidential election and overturn the votes of African Americans and other people, but especially African Americans. I'm trying to figure out what are Republicans for. I'm trying to figure out what Republicans are for. I still can't figure it out. All right. So we'll talk about this some more and some other topics on tomorrow's show. Yeah, I want to remind you that you can register for our new class that starts up Saturday, April 24th, 2021, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Now, this is a 9-week, this time around, it's going to be 9 weeks. It's a 9-week, 18-hour online course that I teach, and we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Those are my Tuesday class. We're going to do, I got home late today. It was snowing in Detroit today. I don't know if y'all heard about it. But and there's so much going on. We're going to do the Tuesday class. We'll do a Wednesday. That should be our last class Wednesday. It'll probably be about 3 hours. But we have a new section starting up Saturday, April 24th. I posted the link here. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, video clips, articles. There's about 50 articles that I reference. It's a ton of information. The PowerPoint presentation is about 150 slides. And we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay. So when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we can't start talking about it in the 15th century. We can't start in 1441 when the Portuguese go into Mauritania. We have to deal with thousands of years of history of what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And we have to also deal with the fact that African people are the original people of North, Central, and South America. And we've been in the land that we call the United States of America going back at least 51,700 years ago. Now, there are a number of books that I use as reference. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in the class. This is one of them, from Dr. David Imhotep. The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And it deals with the African presence in the Americas going back tens of thousands of years ago. But we will also deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. And you have to understand this chronology of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And the teachings that the Moors take into Europe are going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. It's going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. All this stuff gets twisted around. And everything we taught Europeans came back to kick us in the behind. This is why I say I wish we had never taught them. Okay. So the class is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. Now we do the classes live, and all the classes are recorded. You can go back and watch them over and over again. Watch them as much as you want to. You can watch them around the world. So if you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage, when you scroll down, it has information for a radio show. We're on 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, and Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Click here to listen to audio podcasts of our shows. Click here to read articles I've written. This is my show from March 15th, 2021, the day after the Grammys. We talked about Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B performing on the Grammys. I was also on Wake Up with Steve Hood. We recorded that show. Detroit Wants to Know. Detroit Wants to Know on TV, WKBD Channel 50 here in Detroit. And that show just aired Sunday, That was Sunday, April 18th. Okay. And I posted a video on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Steve Hood interviewed me. That's his show, his TV show. And we talked about, we recorded the show March 18th. So it was like 3 days after the Grammys. But we talked about the performance and negative corporate control, hip hop, adultification bias, and different things like this. But then we have information here for the online class. Okay, starts up Saturday, April 24th. Click here to register. Takes you to the next page. And just click right here to enroll. And as soon as you enroll in the class, you can start watching content. We have bonus content because we have class sessions from the previous class that I taught. So you can go ahead and watch that. And then the new class starts up Saturday, April 24th, 2021, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. So we'll post a link here. You can register for that. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Right now, if you'd like this type of information, also, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN Show, paypal.me /the AHN Show. So this helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. And if you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN Show, SHOW, and it'll say Michael, and it'll show my picture there. All right. Okay, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by. Let's keep going. See, this is what I'm explaining. So then when you add another layer onto this, dealing with the hypersexualization of African-American women, that ties into the Jezebel stereotype, that then ties into African-American women being used as a sexual commodity during slavery and being used to breed. And it was not illegal to rape a black woman because she was your property. If you were a slave owner, she was your property. And then that same mindset then stays in place after slavery ends, and you have all these negative stereotypical images of African Americans, but then you have white corporations that finance these negative stereotypical images and use people like Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion to market stripper music and prostitution music and market prostitution. All of this is connected. The way people treat you is largely based upon what people think about you. What people think about you is largely based upon what they've been taught about you. What they've been taught about you is largely based upon what they read, seen, and heard about you. This is why other people who have their history and culture intact are more guarded about the images that are projected about them. They don't just tolerate anything. We're the only ones that just tolerate anything like that. And then when you have some of our artists speak out and say things about other groups, they get put in check. Oh, you think I'm kidding? Go back to 1995. Didn't Michael Jackson have a song, They Don't Really Care About Us? And the Anti-Defamation League came out against Michael Jackson and said he said some negative things in the song about Jews. I still have articles from ADL's website about that. What did Sony do? Sony didn't say, well, change the radio station if you don't like his song. Sony didn't say, oh, you need to teach your children better if you don't like his song. Sony didn't say, oh, he's not talking about you, he's talking about some other Jews. Sony didn't say that. You know what Sony did? Sony took every last one of those CDs off the shelf, removed those lines from the song. It was only like 2 or 3 lines in the song. They removed those lines in the song and put the CD back on the shelf. But when we speak up against negative corporate control hip hop, we're told, oh, if you don't like it, change the station. Or if you don't like it, don't buy it. Oh, you need to teach your children better. That's not what they tell other people.
Black Bees products are a collection of natural, organic, personal care products with an appreciation of nature and bees. Our philosophy is without bees, we have nothing. We are honoring our Nile Valley ancestors who understood the importance of bees. Black Bees created a high-quality, natural, organic personal care line that would be affordable to everyone. We hope you try and enjoy our Black Bees products line and come back and visit us at blackbeesproducts.com.
We all know the cannabis industry is headed toward an uprise in the past decade. What happens when there is a brand that brings this uprise in a blow? The cannabis industry welcomes her uprise. Hustle her hemp. Delivering excellence with pride is her watchword, and how you choose to embrace it makes it a priority. From cultivating rich cannabis into exquisite and tastefully finished CBD products to delivery, Hustle Her Hemp leaves no stone unturned. Hustle Her Hemp's mission is to empower women of color by building business and creating legacies, uniting beauty, health, and business. We are a pure definition of how we want the CBD industry to become in the future. While we are redefining innovation, we bring the same energy to improving the quality of life. Hustle Her Hemp is the new uprise.
With blackbusinesstee.com, the messages are clear and meaningful. Keep your business in the black and out of the red. Mind your black business, know your numbers, and plan strategically. Black Business Boss, lead your industry. Support black business, encourage, patronize, and uplift one another. blackbusinesstee.com currently has products sold in Detroit, Atlanta, Chicago, and Los Angeles, with proceeds returned to the black community. They have a wide selection of hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, hats, sweatshirts that support black-owned businesses. Visit the website blackbusinesstee.com. That's blackbusinesstee.com. For 25 years, the Black History 101 Mobile Museum has carried on the rich legacy of the Black Museum movement in America by showcasing original artifacts of the Black experience at colleges, universities, K-12 schools, corporations, libraries, conferences, and cultural events, making it the most traversed Black History mobile exhibit in American history. Dr. Khalid El-Hakim is the founder of the Black History 101 Mobile Museum, and he is a highly sought-after public speaker on topics of Black history, social studies, education, museum studies, hip-hop, and race relations. Dr. Khalid was named among the change makers for NBC Universal's Erase the Hate campaign and listed as one of the 100 men of distinction for Black enterprise. He recently founded the Michigan Hip Hop Archive on the campus of Western Michigan University. The Black History 101 Mobile Museum is currently scheduling in-person and virtual exhibits nationwide. For more information, please contact Dr. Khalid El-Hakim directly at 313-645-4197, 313-645-4197, or visit their website